Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we are going to do a Perfumers portfolio video on two of my favorite noses from the 1980s. And so if you've been kind of following the channel, there are multiple video types that I've kind of enjoyed putting out because it gives me an excuse to talk about my favorite fragrances, in interesting ways, not top 10, compliment lists for going to the zoo. Or, that stuff doesn't interest me. But, really diving into the perfume houses and who made the perfumes and giving them credit. They're like for the longest time, they were like the silent partners behind the scenes. No one gave any of these perfumers credit back in the day. And so this video is a little bit about a neat way to talk about a bunch of fragrances and also give some of the perfumers credit for the work that they've done. Before we jump into the two 80s perfumers, 70s and 80s perfumers mostly, but there are actually some newer stuff here as well. Let's do Scent of the Day, which I thought I had here, but I don't. Let me just do a quick fresh spray. So this is a fragrance that I purchased because it's a leather fragrance, and you guys know I love leather perfumes. So leather's like an easy sell for me, okay? And this is a fragrance by Salvatore Ferragamo, and it's from their niche line called Testa di Moro. Now, I don't know if this is discontinued or not. I really haven't been able to tell. I thought it was. But Parfumo says it's being marketed by Salvatore Ferragamo Group. However, they may have discontinued this one and issued a new one that's basically called Tuscan Scent Incense Suede, and it's in a black bottle. So this one, if you'll notice on their niche line, they tried to make it a little bit more upclass. There's real leather around the cap. You can see the stitching in the leather right here. And, they added some extra touches to Salvatore Ferragamo's normal line, which doesn't really do much for someone like me. I mean, if you're someone who's into designer perfumes, they've got a couple. They have the Salvatore Ferragamo, I'm not 100% sure what this one's called. I think it's called Porom. It's in the crazy bottle that looks like this. This is discontinued now, unbelievably. If you're into something a little bit more fresh, 90s take, a unique 90s take on a fragrance, check this one out. And if you're into sweet, masculine, modern gourmands, you can check out Salvatore Ferragamo's Uomo. This is almost like a little bit of a nightmare for me because you guys know I don't care for sweet fragrances. And so, for me, this is something I kind of struggle with. I'll spray it on before bed sometimes just to remind myself, but it's got this tiramisu note. Men's fragrances should not have tiramisu. Maybe no fragrance should have tiramisu, but definitely not men's fragrances. If you're a high school kid, maybe this could be something to check out. Salvatore Ferragamo's Uomo is the other designer that you could look into them, but this is the niche line. And so you have higher expectations with the niche line, right? It came out in 2014. I think it's discontinued, even though it says it's still available. It's got frankincense, pink pepper, dried fruits. I blind bought this based on the note list, by the way. Leather, saffron, patchouli, with styrax, sandalwood, and mate tea, okay? And, if you like a fresh leather, if you like a leather that you can wear year-round, even in the heat, this one's not bad. There is some freshness to it. The thing about it is that it opens up very designer-ish, and what I mean by that is you get a huge blast of ISOE Super. You get a huge blast of synthetic smelling molecules. It doesn't smell like a high-end niche fragrance right away. As it dries down, it starts to go more and more in the, nicer direction. This would have been something that I would have loved to see them just put out as a Salvatore Ferragamo fragrance for men. you know, forget the niche line and charging $260. Just put it out as a fragrance for men and let it be a $100 fragrance. There's no need for this to be a $250 fragrance. I talked about on my channel the other day how one of my favorite fresh scents to wear during summer when you want a leather scent is Je suis un homme. I would much rather wear this over Testa di Moro. Also, oh, another fresh leather that just hit me. I know I'm kind of going off the rails here, but bear with me. If you like a fresh leather, check out Fan Defendi. This is discontinued, but Fan Defendi Porom. This is a fresh take on a modern, if you want a modern leather fragrance, I would probably take Fan Defendi actually over Testa di Moro. I think it's a little better fragrance, believe it or not. Even though it was just a regular old designer, I think they did a better job with Fan Defendi. Let's see what the notes are, shall we? Fan Defendi Porom, 2012. Discontinued for sure. Francois Demachy, Benoit Lapauza, and Delphine Lebeau Croiac, Calabrian bergamot, Egyptian basil, Guatemalan cardamom, pink pepper, geranium, and Texas cedar with leather, tonka, and Indonesian patchouli. Yeah, I think this is a better take on a designer leather. This is definitely designer level in like a niche bottle. It's still good. I'm not saying it's a bad scent, okay? It's just my leather expectations are here. You know, they are, it's my favorite category. I have so many there's actually some leathers here in this video we're about to do I'd much rather be wearing. But I like testing stuff out. You know, I bought it a year ago, tested it, and never wore it again. And so I figured I'd try it again, and it kind of gave me the same vibe. It's not bad, but it's when a brand, even one that isn't really known for their, you know, perfume pedigree, if you will, when a brand puts out something in a niche line and charges a bunch of money, you instantly get higher expectations, and unfortunately that one just doesn't fulfill them for me. Okay, so let's talk about the video. Let's talk about the two perfumers who are featured in this video, and they're two of my favorite 80s perfumers. And so if you've been kind of watching these, you know I keep saying, oh, I think we're knocking the big guns out. I don't think we have any of the big perfumers left. I went through the list, and I realized that's not true. There's actually a bunch of big perfumers left to cover here. So the first is going to be Pierre Wargnai, and he made some of my favorite fragrances. You'll see a couple of them on this list from the 1980s. Most of his creations were from the 80s and 90s, and then he has one in the 2000s. And then the second perfumer is a guy named Ron Winograd. And if you know 80s perfumes, you know he's famous for 3 major masculine fragrances. So let's get into this. Pierre Wargnai, and he basically started his career off with a bang in the early 80s. And he released this little gem. And I'm not even talking about we're going to cover the ones in my collection, but he's famous for one fragrance that just blew up like wildfire in the last decade. I don't even own it in my collection, so we'll talk about it, but these in my collection, this is, you know, leaving out the one he's very famous for. So this is Dracar Noir, okay? Dracar Noir is in and of itself a flanker of Dracar. A lot of people don't realize that. This is like the most famous flanker of all time, if you will, okay? And Dracar Noir is basically this spicy, woody lavender fragrance with a huge dose of dihydromercenol. And dihydromercenol gives that kind of fresh feel that the 80s started to get famous for. The fragrances that I love and talk about, they don't really have that freshness, you know, the cool water type vibe. This is kind of where it started in the early 80s. You could already see, you know, even in 1982, the waves no pun intended, the waves start to shift, okay? This has Artemisia, basil, lavender, lemon vervain, rosemary, carnation, jasmine, coriander, juniper, amber, oak moss, leather, patchouli, sandalwood, fir, vetiver, and cedarwood. And for the longest time, this was like the fragrance that everyone wore in the 80s. You know how Sauvage is kind of the thing for the 2010s? This was the thing in the 80s. This is what everyone wore. It's really interesting thinking that this is what high school kids walked around smelling like, because now we think about this as like an older fragrance, but back then this is what the kids were wearing. And this is actually a vintage. I don't know if you can see, but it's a vintage Cosmere bottle. And the thing about buying vintage Dracar Noir is that, yes, the Cosmere version is stronger. Yes, it lasts longer, but you have to, if you really want the true vintage, okay, you have to go for the very first generation in 82, because I think in something like 84, they removed the patchouli from the scent. So there was actually patchouli in this scent originally that I don't think is in any of the variations after the first iteration. If you go to, what's that website? There's a website that you can actually go to, the Raiders of the Lost Scent, okay? Raiders of the Lost Scent. And they highlight some of the different, most popular fragrances ever. So, for example, if you wanted to learn how to identify vintage Koros, which ones are Charles of the Ritz, you know, that kind of thing, you can check out that website. They do the same thing for Dracar Noir, and they basically say that the patchouli was only in the first iteration. So even though it's in the note listing, these bottles, and even though it's a vintage Cosmere bottle, doesn't have it. There's no patchouli in here, okay? So if you want the heavier, and patchouli added this kind of heavy base to it, so, you know, the fresher versions that we're smelling now, it's a little bit different than what the scent was originally meant to be, but that's where kind of tastes were going. So Guy Laroche made the executive decision to, you know, try to follow the trend, and they removed the patchouli, and it obviously worked. I mean, it became one of the most popular, iconic fragrances of all time. Dracar Noir, 82. I do enjoy wearing it, but it's not something I yearn for. You know what I mean? Like, if I wear it, I'll wear it once, twice a year during the high heat. I usually wear this in spring and summer. And I enjoy it, but when I'm done, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to be done with this and wear something else, if that makes sense. But as far as popularity goes, the other fragrance that Pierre Wargnai created that ended up being such a hit, he created YSL L'Homme, and he created La Nuit de l'Homme, okay? He created with Anne Flippo and Dominique Ropion. They created La Nuit de l'Homme, and that's probably his most famous creation as far as bottles sold, believe it or not. La Nuit de l'Homme is, you know, it just caught fire. And if you were following fragrance videos and stuff like that, you know, top 10 compliment lists over the last decade were filled with La Nuit de l'Homme. Now, I don't even own a bottle. It's not my thing. If I want cardamom, I'll wear oud wood or something like that. But, you know, even Jacques Bogart's Riviera Nights does it for me as far as cardamom goes. But La Nuit de l'Homme is one of Pierre Wargnai's most famous creations. And then, now we're jumping from 82 to 85. And we're going to get to my favorite creation. Excuse me real quick whilst I hydrate. Okay. All right, so we're going to jump to 1985. And in 85, they released one of my favorite fragrances of all time. It could be a signature scent for me if I had a signature scent. This is one that I never get tired of, ever. Whereas I was mentioning with Dracar Noir, I wear it and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for it to be done. This one I could wear every day. I mean, there's something about it, the mixture of the tobacco and the honey And, you know, just the manliness of the scent, the green notes at the top. There's even a dose of oak moss in the vintage bottles I'm going to show you that have been removed in the newer versions. This is Boss number 1. Now, I went into the vault. If you look right here, you'll see Boss number 1 on the front. Now, there's a new bottle. It looks like a brand new design. Oh, God. That smell, man. But the original bottles of Boss actually looked like this. They said Boss, and there was no number 1 on the front. There was no reason for there to be a number 1. It was Hugo Boss. That was it. For men, EDT. There was no other fragrances. There was no number 2 at the time. It was just, there was no number 1, number 2. There was only this. They only came back and added number 1 once more and more fragrances started to come out. So, if you can find a bottle that doesn't say number 1 on the front, you're getting like the earliest iteration. And then it went to this one, and then the newest version, which doesn't have the oak moss in it at all. Oh, I'll tell you what, if you like fragrances like Marbert Man, or if you like Boss number 1, check out stuff like Marbert Man, that honey, tobacco, you know, that honey of the 80s just does it for me. Koros has a big dollop of honey as well. I love the way honey was used. And here, I remember when Rich Mitch told me he didn't own Boss number 1, I was like, go, right now. Drop everything you're doing. Go buy Boss number 1. It is ram duck in a bottle. I mean, it is just absolutely everything we love as vintage enthusiasts. And if you want to see what the vintage looked like, you'll notice that the bottom of the bottle says Eurocos, Giorgio Beverly Hills. And that's because back then, Giorgio Beverly Hills owned Hugo Boss, or they owned the rights to distribute their fragrances. And so Giorgio Beverly Hills, it's also on this one, but both of my bottles say Eurocos, made in the UK. Okay, so both of these are made in the UK. And as you can see, this is my backup. And this is the one I use, and you can see from the air being let in, this has become more dark over time. But both are, I mean, you know, it doesn't matter to me whether it says Boss number 1 or it doesn't say Boss number 1 on the front. As long as it's the made in UK version, I'm happy. I absolutely love this fragrance. It's spicy, it's woody, there's tobacco in it, it's manly, it's masculine. It is, the patchouli in here will blow your mind. There's a touch of powdery orris, but it's the 80s in a bottle. I mean, it made my top 10 of all time. Easily it made my top 10. I've said before that this is what a man who, you know, takes care of business smells like. This is a man that, someone who wears this to me is someone who pays the bills on time, makes sure that, you know, his family, his children, his wife, you know, the people in his inner circle are well taken care of. He's kind, caring, you know, it's the you know, talk softly but carry a big stick kind of guy. That's the guy who wears this. And it's absolutely, it's perfect for, I love that fragrance. I never get tired of it. It's one of my all-time favorites. So doing these Perfumers portfolio videos, I figured all the big name perfumers were gone. They're not. I mean, these are some big time perfumers we're talking about here. Okay. Then he followed it up in '88 with a similar style fragrance. He jumped from Hugo Boss to Paco Rabanne, but the fragrances will remind you of one another, okay? There are some similarities. And this is Paco Rabanne Tenare. Now, I have a 200 milliliter of Tenare, okay? I backed it up. I didn't pull it out of the, you know, lock and chain because it's hard to get to. It's all the way in the back because it's big. It's a 200 ml bottle that looks like this. But Tenere, imagine Boss Number 1, but with the floral notes amped up in the most animalic 80s dirty, in the way of Iquitos. Okay, if you took those animalic floral Iquitos, dirty animalic notes that Gerard Anthony worked with in Iquitos, and you amped it up, spicy, floral, dirty, with that honeyed Boss Number 1 undertone, you get Tenere. And I absolutely love it. I don't love it as much as Boss Number 1, but I love it. It has that honeyed vibe. There's lavender, cinnamon. Actually, there's a lot of the same notes. If you compare the notes to Boss Number 1 and Tenere, you'll notice there's lots of the same notes that go back and forth. You know, you find a lot of the same notes if you do back and forth comparisons. So Tenere is kind of like Boss Number 1. In the 80s, it's in the late 80s, there started to be this trend of releasing fragrances that had this dirty, animalic, floral, almost feminine floral, but for men, and this is part of that wave. And this is one of my favorites. This and Iquitos are, you know, my two favorites as far as that style, if you will, but it's absolutely stunning. If you've never tried Tenere, that's one that has not been hyped up yet, you know, to the point where you can't find bottles at a reasonable price. So Tenere is the final 80s fragrance for Pierre Wargnai. Now we're going to jump to the 2000s. There's two from the 2000s, one from 2002, and it's also a Hugo Boss creation. At least my bottle is. They then spun the brand off into its own brand, and it's called Baldessarini. Now this is the Eau de Cologne, okay? And it's changed hands multiple times. My version is a Procter & Gamble Prestige. You can see right there, Procter & Gamble Prestige Beauty. Now it's being marketed by Maurer & Wertz, the company that does Tabac. But Baldessarini was the name, or the last name, of the chief executive officer that ran Hugo Boss for the longest time, okay? So by 2002, he was about ready to retire. And they thought, what better way to honor him than to give him his own fragrance? And so it actually says Hugo Boss right below Baldessarini on my bottle. You can kind of see it. It's starting to fade. But the new bottles say Baldessarini because Baldessarini became its own brand. Hugo Boss spun it off, okay? But this is Pierre Wargnai and Jean-Marc Chailan, who I think is the kid of Raymond Chailan. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I believe that is true. And they created this fragrance, bitter orange, mandarin orange, and spearmint, with clove, cumin, and patchouli, and then balsamic notes, musk, and sandalwood. As far as like a summer cologne goes that stays citrusy on top, the citruses really last on this one, but also has a little bit of that dirtiness underneath, but still very wearable for heat. This is a great fragrance, fantastic. No one talks about this one. I don't know if the reformulation after it left, Hugo Boss was kind to the fragrance or not. I've never done a comparison, but my bottle is definitely worth the 30 bucks or whatever it is I paid for. This is a tester, no cap. But I absolutely love it for the heat. Baldessarini by Hugo Boss. Check that one out. Eau de Cologne. And then finally, a discontinued fragrance to cap off Pierre Wargnai's final creation. This is from 2006, and he did this one with Eleanor Massenet, and this is called Antidote. Viktor&Rolf Antidote. Beautiful presentation. The only bad thing about this fragrance is the atomizer is known to break, and mine did. So you can see it's kind of wonky there. It'll come right off if I flip it over. Spicy, a little bit sweet, but not sickly sweet like masculine started to go after 2006. It opens up with this fresh spiciness of mint and cardamom with some citruses, grapefruit, bergamot, and orange. And then there's a huge floral heart. Violet, lavender, geranium, freesia, orange blossom, nutmeg, cinnamon, with a base of amber, oak moss, gaiac wood, beautiful iris in this one, labdanum, leather, patchouli, sandalwood, tonka, vanilla, white musk, and cedar. It's very complex, extremely complex. You won't understand it wearing it once or twice. You'll have to wear it and get to know it. I usually wear it in spring and summer because it does not last very long. So it only lasts about 5 to 6 hours on my skin, but I do have the big boy bottle. This is 125 ml. Yeah, 125 ml. So you can just reapply if you get the big bottle. But it is discontinued. It is expensive. But as far as a designer goes, this will really show us how deep to the depths designers have fallen. This was a designer fragrance. It's absolutely amazing. Creative, high quality ingredients. The only knock on it, is that it doesn't last long, unfortunately. But it's a beautiful fragrance. Okay, now we're going to jump to Ron Winograd. He's the other old school perfumer from the 70s and 80s. And if you remember me talking about some of the old school perfumers, you remember me saying, you know, some of them just couldn't adapt. They couldn't adapt to the changing landscape, right? And I feel like Ron Winograd was one of them, because these three fragrances we're about to talk about are three of my favorite fragrances from the 70s and 80s of all time. I mean, if you go watch my top 100 list, these are scattered all across them, you know. And then he just, poof, disappeared, you know. Didn't do anything. Just completely fell off the face of the earth. He did Armani Parfum for women in 82. I've never smelled that. He did Roomba for Balenciaga in 89. I've never smelled that. He did Monsieur Leonard in 92. Never smelled that. And he did Jeffrey Bean Eau de Toilette in 99. Never smelled it. So he did some other things, but lots of stuff for women. Roomba Parfum in 89 for women. Never smelled it. So he did some other things, but not for men. But the masculines that he did, man, I wish he would have done more masculines, because these are absolutely amazing. So the first one is one of my favorite fragrances of the 70s and one of my favorite masculines to wear in the cold, okay? So the current version is called Lagerfeld Classic, in the iconic bottle with the ring that Lagerfeld designed on his own. Lagerfeld made this design. You can see it in Scarface, the movie Scarface. This is the fragrance that Al Pacino actually wore to get into character when he played Scarface. And when he played Tony Montana. And this is what the old bottles look like. They said Lagerfeld Cologne, not Lagerfeld Classic. This is what the new ones look like. If you're going to get the new version, a word to the wise, try to find one that's distributed by Inter Parfums. The ones that distributed by Coty are... Inter Parfums does good reformulations to my nose. And but if you can swing it, if you're willing to pay the extra money, go for Lagerfeld Cologne. Because no matter who makes it, forget about it. It doesn't matter. As long as it says Lagerfeld Cologne, you're in good form. It's either going to be Parfums Lagerfeld distributed by Lagerfeld, or it's going to be Parfums Lagerfeld distributed by Bethco, which is what mine says. Or it's going to be Parfums Lagerfeld distributed by Parfums International. Who cares? Doesn't matter. As long as it says Lagerfeld Cologne, you're set. And this is basically what it looks like when you open it up. And here's the bottle. Look at the difference in the juice color. Right? Instantly you can see. This one's much more sickly orange. This is browner. There's much more oak moss in this. The cap is metal. This is a splash, actually. You know, this is one of... This to me, I can see a direct link between this and JHL for Men, which came out in '82 for Joseph Henry Lauder. They were both these Orientals for men. And then straight to Obsession. You know, you can just see the Oriental link. But this is the one that started it all. Lagerfeld Cologne. This one, I've described it before this way, that this version is almost like if you took Lagerfeld Cologne and cut it in half. And the masculine half you took out, right? So it still keeps the beautiful aldehydes. You know, it has that orange smelling tobacco. It has that orris root, that powdery orris root. Here, you keep all of that, okay? You keep the rose and all the stuff that they kept. Keep a little bit of the vanilla, but you add loads more oak moss, loads more tobacco, you know, loads more of the masculine notes that used to make men's fragrances from the 70s and 80s. Oh, my God. It is so good. I just want to wear it. It's 100 degrees out. I want to wear this. Definitely wear it over this Salvatore Ferragamo. It's not bad. It's just, you know, you just expect more from something that's $270. But Lagerfeld Cologne, the first one from Winograd, 1978. If you have never smelled Lagerfeld Cologne, even if you can only get the current version of Lagerfeld Classic, try to get the Inter Parfums version, but it's amazing stuff. It's currently being, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think this is discontinued. I think Coty was making this for a while and they stopped. So, if you can scoop a bottle now, even if it's cheap, do it. Oh, I love it. All right, next we're going to jump to 1980. So that was 78. This is 1980. This is Leonard Porom, okay? Now this is what, there's different versions of this bottle. There's this brown version, and then there's this version right here. This is what the box looked like of the 25 mLs they used to do. And there's the back with the most beautiful words in perfume history. Alcohol, fragrance, water. What more do you need? So, open it up. And there she is. There's the bottle of the 25 ml. It doesn't matter. They're both the same. Oh, this is so good. You know, late 70s, early 80s is where there's this carrot note in here, which is completely strange and out of place. But it fits perfectly with the woody, spicy. You know how I like Bel Ami because it's spicy leather? This is spicy leather, but the leather they used is, it almost seems more animalic than Bel Ami. The leather was created in a way where they kind of mixed castoreum and labdanum, okay? And they combined them to create this leather note with oak moss, of course oak moss, and frankincense, which, you know, gives it a little bit of that sparkle. It's just stunning. Oh, and there's iris in here too. You know I love leather and iris. This is like a dream fragrance for me. Like if I made a fragrance, it would be close to this, or Bel Ami or something like that. I mean, and the other thing to mention is value for money. I think I got these 25 mLs for 25 bucks, 30 bucks. I think I got this 100 ml for $60. Insane. Absolutely insane value for a fragrance of this quality to me. Everything feels top-notch. There is some lavender and marjoram and patchouli, cinnamon and vetiver. It's a complex fragrance, but it's an 80s masculine, you know, Chris from Scentland says it smells like a well-traveled man's fragrance, and it absolutely does. It smells like a man that's been around the world. He's cultured. He's not ignorant. He's enlightened. He is knowledgeable. Those are the words that kind of come to mind when I think about Leonard Porom. And I absolutely love wearing it. These are fragrances I never get tired of. Boss Number 1, Tenare, Antidote, Lagerfeld, Leonard Porom, and then finally Furyo. Furyo is Ron Winnograd's final fragrance for men, unfortunately. My God. 1988, okay? 1988. It takes a little bit of the animalic floral that I was saying is in Tenere from 88, but it keeps some of the early 80s animalic flair, okay? So you know how Kouros has that huge dose of animalis and civet and stuff like that? This keeps that, but it puts it on top of like that late 80s hyper floral style that was becoming popular. There's a note of ambrette seed here. Best use of ambrette seed outside of Dior Homme, to me, here. The ambrette in this is absolutely stunning, and that's a note I've learned I really love. By the way, Ron Winograd worked on this with Thierry Vassa. Okay, I've often said Vassar's best fragrance is Salvatore Dali Porom, also from the late 80s, I think 87, 88. This could be in contention for Wasser's best fragrance. The stuff he was doing in the 80s was mind-blowing. There's this carnation, geranium, lavender combo in the heart that is just to die for. And you get the lavender, herbal lavender, but that huge dose of civet in the base. And it's synthetic civet. Russian Adam sent me synthetic civet, and I realized I don't mind it. I actually like it. And it's synthetic civet with a huge dose of oak moss, musk, patchouli, amber, and vanilla. And it lasts for about 28 hours, okay? I just made up a number, but that's probably how long it lasts. This thing, Thomas from early Greek said you could power the eastern seaboard the eastern seafront, east coast of the United States for a week on a bottle of this stuff. And he's right, it is powerful, vintage, masculine, no holds barred, you know, no apologies for being a man here. This is in your face. You don't like it, get the hell out of my way. And I absolutely love it. It feels like there's a rose note in here too. I don't think there is. I think it's the mixture of carnation. I think the geranium is giving a hint of that spicy rose. You know, the bottle's red. It feels like there's a little bit of that spicy rose. But the ambrette and the lavender, oh, God, in the top. Oh, I mean, what a fragrance. I got 5 bottles of this, and this is the new one. This is the reformulated one everyone hates. I love it. The older ones say 80 degrees on here. I'll show you. I don't have a bottle of Furyo vintage. I wish I did. I don't, though. I couldn't find it. But the old Jacques Bogarts that are vintage say the percentage down here below. So I think this one says like 80% or something down here on the vintage. Would love to find a bottle. I can't. Or I haven't been able to. But anyways, Perfumers portfolio video on 2 of the best 70s and 80s noses, and we haven't even knocked them out until now. And I was thinking, here all the good noses are done. Actually, we haven't even done Thierry Vasser, I don't think. So maybe we'll do him next. But kudos to Ron Winograd and Pierre Wargnai. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Wargnai. You know, these fragrances are very close and dear to my heart. And, you know, it's the best decade of fragrances for me. And these 2 were a big part of it. So hats off to them. Cheers. Hats off to you guys for supporting me, participating in the stuff that we've done. Tomorrow, Saturday, July 23rd, is going to be the live, live stream with Russian Adam. So please have questions ready. And, you know, we're going to talk about his new line of fragrances. We're going to talk about the ingredients he sent me. And we're just going to kind of catch up and do a second live stream and take some questions from you guys. So, again, thank you everyone for the support. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. It is always appreciated, but again, it's up to you. You don't have to. But those who want to be in this community, you know, we want you here if you're like-minded and interested in the kind of things that we're interested in. And we're growing slowly but surely, and that's the way I like it. I like the slow and steady growth. I like seeing the people write me and say, hey, Ramsey, I just found your channel. Where in the world have you been? We've been needing somebody like you. I mean, that makes me feel really good because I'm touching the right people. They're out there. They just have to find out about us. And that's where the likes, the comments, and the subscriptions help, you know. So anyways, I do try and respond to every single comment. That's my goal that I set for myself. I want to respond to every single comment. I've learned so much from the comments, and I've made so many friends from the comments, believe it or not. And, you know, just in this community in general, it's an amazing community. It's one of the finest hobbies you can have. And I hope you guys are learning something as far as the perfumers, the compositions, the stuff I love, you know, that kind of thing. And I can't wait to talk to Rush and Adam tomorrow. So cheers, guys. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye now.